Mike, how's it going?
Drew, what's happening, man?
Nothing much. Another day. Weeks are coming to an end. So, Mike, give our students a little background on yourself, just kind of high level where you're at, not necessarily how you got there, but kind of just what you're doing in life right now.
I am the broker at a real estate firm called Torii Properties, or Torii Inc. We started it we're coming up on a 2-year anniversary. A couple friends who are software engineers and myself started this brokerage with an effort to try to change the a bit ancient and stuck in their ways sort of residential real estate model.
So you're a tech company in the real estate business,
Right.
And also a BC alumni. When did you graduate?
I am 2009, which is, it's bananas. You kind of, once you get out of college, or even if you do grad school, I guess that's still the case, but you lose sort of track of, there's none of these hard dates of, where, like reviewing your life or monumental milestones or anything like that. There's weddings and babies and stuff, but otherwise it's just every year just kind of meshes together.
Absolutely. It's time. So once you get out of school, guys, time flies. So take advantage while you're there. And
yeah. Praying. I didn't expect this, but it sneaks up on you. So
good. So Mike, before we dive deeper, what's your perspective with COVID-19 right now? And what have you seen? How has your day changed, and how is the industry changing with kind of the impacts of COVID-19?
Yeah, of course. Residential real estate in particular is like a lot of high touch, like in-person meetings. You're usually out with people on showings, negotiating offers. You have inspections, walkthroughs, closings. A lot of these things are in person. And a lot of them clearly, from what we've seen the last month, don't have to be, or can be greatly reduced from that. So COVID-19, just like any other industry, it's slowing us down. Very simply, there's people that don't want to sell their homes anymore, or might wait until things pass in order to let potential buyers in their home. And buyers on the same rate are, either worried about their job, something might have happened already, or they just want to slow down. So there's a lot less activity that's out there, but it hasn't stopped a very hot Boston real estate market, and it has been for the last 10 years. So, instead of having 5 offers on a property, you might have 2 or 3, but it's still selling at a rapid pace. Definitely affected, but not fully incapacitated.
So the Boston real estate market is still booming. It's just now changed, and honestly, a technology company that brings in some of those efficiencies, and where you don't have to always be in person to do business, you guys may be positioned to do better after COVID-19. Yeah. So let's dive deeper, Mike. Being a BC alumni, let's walk back. You said you graduated in 2009, not too many years ago. But can we go back to that mindset when you came out? Can you kind of paint a brief picture of what the market looked like to you, your friends, and maybe how you went about securing your first job?
Yeah. So, we came off the heels of the 2008 recession, or like we're in it at that point. So some job offers are pulled, some companies went under. There was, it was a bit of a tumultuous time. It wasn't a slam dunk that you were going to get that finance job or whatever it was right out of school anymore. And some people had their offers retracted. So I'd like to think that some of those people that are, were intelligent anyway, might have shifted to a different industry at the time. And maybe they're making headway in a place they initially thought, or never initially thought about. While I was looking, I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Very extroverted, personable guy. So sales seemed like the right thing to do. I had a sales class with John Westman, who was an adjunct professor at the time. He brought in, people from the industry each week, including Dell and EMC, and a few of these other programs that you can get in right away. AT&T had one. So there's these options of like, okay, I guess I want sales. I still don't really know. So went along and interviewed, and something about me, I'm not very good at like feigning interest beyond a few minutes. So some of the programs just didn't sound great to me. And I think that they caught that emotion or sentiment over the phone or in person at the time. So, I went on some interviews, I tried some things out, still wasn't really sure. And then a friend of mine who I RA'd with, his dad was at ESPN at the time, not a company that usually is out at BC recruiting or in your traditional path. And he said that there's probably an opening because they have these entry level sales and marketing roles within ESPN. And it was in New York. So my parents are from Connecticut. I knew that if I took something or interviewed there, I could stay with them for like a little bit and do an excessively long commute. But at least I had that fallback plan in case I couldn't get an apartment right away. So I went in and interviewed and got a job at ESPN.
So that's awesome. So you said you landed a gig at a non-target, a company that BC is not a target school for. Correct. So you knew you wanted to do something sales, but you're trying to figure out what industry, what company you wanted to work for. How did you said, could you remind me how you went back and got that ESPN gig?
I had a habit of just involving myself in a lot of different things at BC, which I think is a huge asset for somebody like me that would want to build relationships, know people, do sales and all that. So to help offset some of the BC costs at the time, I IRA'd for 3 years. And one of the people that I IRA'd with, his dad was at ESPN. So we're just having a casual chat on one of those like very uncomfortable BC couches with like the wooden arms, all that stuff. So I just remember chatting at the time. He's like, "Oh, my dad, maybe I can, introduce you." I was like, "Oh, that would be great." And followed up the next day, at the end of school, I went home. I went and interviewed in New York, and they didn't have a full-time role at the moment. So they gave me a temp job it was a temp job essentially moving into the same role that I was interviewing with. And 2 months later, I had a full-time gig.
So that's interesting. So not only can you network with the friend's dad who's at ESPN, you were an RA on campus, yeah, and you use campus relationships, peers of yours, through conversations to get connected to different companies or nonprofits. That's amazing. Yep. And you land the ESPN gig, and it's not necessarily the ending point. It's just the temporal. There must have been some hustle in there. You said you were commuting 90 minutes or so from Connecticut.
So I would stay at my parents', but that commute 90 minutes each way can really wear on you. So my sister happened to live in New York at the time, crash on her floor maybe once every couple weeks. My cousin and then other BC people that graduated with me were kind enough to lend me a couch every now and again at the beginning. So
now you're in New York, you got your friends, you got kind of a nice peer group support network around you. I know you moved around in a couple different roles, but can you kind of tell us how you broke into the real estate business? Because you made a major shift from doing ESPN sales to now you're a broker in real estate.
You never know keep your eyes open. You never know what's going to be thrown in front of you. So after a couple of years in New York, I was like, okay, this is fun, but I also like New York's eating me alive at that point. I was like, this is great, but I would like to shift, maybe move back to Boston, something like that. A friend of mine, once again, I threw this out to some people, and a friend of mine who from BC who got a job at Tempur-Pedic of all places. So you never think like you're going to be involved in sort of bedding or mattresses or anything like that. But he's like, "Hey, they've got a Boston position open. My bosses do." Where you'd go around the territory, see who's selling your product, all the vendors, all the retail spots, and just maintain relationships with them, teach their salespeople the highlights of your product, and then negotiate things like ad spend and stuff like that. So those bosses ended up being in New York at the time. I interviewed with them. I liked them. I thought it would be fun. I'm not really an office person. As I told you the other day, like I feel like a lot of people are going to realize that at this point too, that going in the office 5 days a week on a mandatory schedule is, might not be their cup of tea anymore. But I took that gig and went to Boston and worked for Tempur-Pedic, which is based out of Kentucky. So there's a lot of travel back and forth to Lexington, which is actually a great place. So
what kind of helped kind of leverage you into kind of your current track?
Yeah. So it was an event out of my control. So I was with a few friends. I had run the Boston Marathon in 2012 with a group called Best Buddies. But at the marathon bombings, I happened to be with a couple friends in the middle of sort of the chaos. We were at the finish line. A bomb exploded. Everybody started to run. And it's a very long story for another time. But at the moment, we were trying to get away from the street where everything was going on. So as we left, a girl looked hurt, saying that her name is Brittany and she's hurt. So we stopped and helped her out, tried to get an EMT. We got her on a wheelchair onto an ambulance and then away, and hopefully to safety. And we didn't really know who she was, but continued on with the day. And then a couple weeks later, I ended up seeing her page on Facebook. There was a fundraising page for her. I reached out to the maker of the page. The maker of the page happened to be Brittany's sister. Brittany's sister is an MBA from BC. Brittany was at the law school and the business school at BC at the time. So I just started talking and just like wanted to check if she's okay and possibly meet her if she's up for it in the future. And that single day, just by being at that finish line, like kind of changed a trajectory for me. And I got really close with her and her family. We went to her wedding and her graduation and all this stuff. Long story, but anyway, her dad, I was golfing with like later in the next year. I'm talking to him about possibly shifting careers. I still don't really know what I want to do. I still like sales, but this thing is kind of running its course. And he recommended first to look at some of the real estate tech companies that he was using because he was a real estate agent, and then also recommended getting my license and seeing if I like that. It's worth a trial, a lot of interpersonal interaction and all that. And away we went from there. So that summer I got my license.
That's amazing. You were just being yourself, and that then opened up more opportunity without you trying to get it. And now you're in the real estate business, and you're not necessarily with Torii yet, but you're now in kind of the industry that you feel comfortable in. And so how did you make that transition once you're in the business to now you're a principal with two founders and a more tech real estate company?
One just common thought process is like, I'm always looking for maybe new ways to do stuff. I kind of get bored with like, just because we said this is the way we've always done it sort of mentality. And so I'm usually one trying to, probe and try to change things. So that mindset, like I was at Keller Williams for a few years as an agent, started to build my business, eventually went solo, and those things sort of led up to a conversation. It is one of the other founders of Torii is James. He's the CEO. He was a friend of another kid I RA'd for, who's like one of my best friends now. We had the same birthday. We're a year apart. I'll probably see him when all this is over. So anyway, once again, people in your life tangentially, related, and they come in and out and stuff. But James approached me because he and his friend Zach, who were Tufts guys, were thinking about, starting a company, or had already developed some of the technology, but they wanted to make it a real estate brokerage. They just had a very tough time in the past with their transactions in real estate. They had the similar mindset of, I would like to fix some things about that. They approached me about turning it into a brokerage, and then it didn't take very long. And I was like, okay, yeah, this sounds awesome. Let's give it a go. I went and got my broker's license, which is past your agent, so you can operate solo. And we started in June 2018.
That's amazing, Mike. So when you think about it, right, it comes full circle. When you're 22 coming out BC in the heart of a recession, you knew that at 32 you'd be working for a real estate tech company as a principal broker, right?
No clue. No clue.
And so if you could kind of sum up into kind of 3 actionable tips or something a student can take away from your story, what would that look like to you?
One is keep your interests going. I think that, once you get a job and you might only focus on that, there's ways to get out of just as I said earlier, like the way we've always done it sort of deal. And one in particular was at Tempur-Pedic. I realized going to Spartan races, which was, a big thing at the time, or just starting out at the time, there were so many products at these events and so many people at these events touting health and wellness, but sleep was never mentioned there, and there wasn't any sort of product there. So just because I had been going to these things, I was like, oh, why aren't we in this? So I started as like just a regular salesperson, creating a marketing plan to get to a lot of these big events and stuff and pitched that to the Tempur-Pedic like execs. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out, but it showed that I was thinking outside the box. So definitely keep your interest in a lot of stuff has a cross-pollination effect. 2 is the relationships that you need to get, or the network that you need to, like, whoever's going to help you is probably not your direct friend at the moment, but it might be friends of friends. So don't hesitate to like start asking your immediate friends, seeing who they know. And then that kind of expands out, and you never know how many like degrees of separation away you are from finding something or having a good conversation that leads you to something else. So don't be discouraged if people don't respond, or that you think that you don't know anybody. Anybody that you went to BC with that's a friend could lead you eventually to a different path or a different course. 3rd one, if you are gonna ask people for things, be more direct, be detailed and concise when you're laying out like kind of who you are and what you're looking for. Don't be timid, because it's very easy for people to skip over an email or say now's not the time or something. But the more direct and the more somebody feels like they know you, then they'll be willing to help you out.
I think to add, so keep your interest alive. Spartan races are awesome, and it led to more opportunity in your job because you just got there, and you got to probably travel to Spartan races and participate them at a steeper discount because you're also going there for business. But the second point is, your network is not always going to be the people you know directly. There's I think she's a psychologist, Meg J is her name, and she talks about loose ties. So that's like the 3rd degree connection, where if you are able to kind of branch into those 3rd and 4th degree connections, you'll be able to land employment and then further yourself in a career, because they aren't going to directly care and be impacted by your day-to-day life. And when they get an interest in you, they'll kind of be able to help you climb and get you in touch with people you never knew existed. Mm-hmm. So that's so valuable, Mike, and our students will really appreciate that. Thank you. So without further ado, to always wrap this up, being a BC alum, we got to take you back in time a little bit and hear more about you. So we're going to go into our Once an Eagle, Always an Eagle section. You ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. So, favorite professor or administrator or staff at BC?
I have to list a few. So, well, Amy Donegan put us in touch. So she's
great.
She's fantastic. She was on Tech Trek, and Professor Gallagher was the teacher at the time, and Amy came along on that trip, which is where, we developed a closer relationship. So she's been really great to talk to and just bounce ideas off of, even 10, 11 years later. So Amy Donegan, Amy Lacombe, and Richard Keeley are both tremendous. So it's a joy every time I go to see them at BC. And then I had a class with Peter Bell and John Clavin called Perspectives on Management. And that, along with the John Gallagher class, were both really fantastic. So those, I'd say, are my favorite people. Great people. And Richard Keeley's now retired, but great person, great BC guy. And Peter Bell will actually be on the show later, so we'll be excited to have him. Oh, look at that. Well, I'll have to reach out. Yeah. Second question. It's late night time. We're coming back from MA's 1:30. Okay. Lower Live is rocking. Mike, what are you ordering BC late night? If it's available, the steak and cheese. That classic. BJ Raji who I've never talked to in my life, but he was a lineman that ended up being on the Packers, and he at the time ordered he's like, oh, I'll get the double steak, and I was like, what? It's like, it's an option there. So of course I was ready to go right after. I was like, yeah, I'll eat. I want what he had. Yeah. BJ is a good guy. And then finally, for our students, one piece or one tip, or like, what should every student do or try to do before graduating? And I didn't study abroad. You should probably do that. I don't know how to bring that up now during when you can't even travel out of the country and stuff, but study abroad, travel, get that experience. Yeah, exactly. My greatest regret was doing that. And also I thought it was really awesome when I was we'd take trips to like friends' houses, because they're from different parts of the country. I wasn't I'd only see, I had to that point only see my family and like my friends from homes, places and how they lived and and stuff. And it creates a good bond. And a lot of friends came to my house and I went to theirs. So I thought that was really cool to see people in their natural habitat.
Absolutely. Good. Mike, we really appreciate it. If a student resonated with this talk today or wants to reach out and learn more about you, Torii Properties, or just hear more about your background, what's the best way they can get in contact with you?
Sure. My email is mike@torii, Torii.properties. So you can email me, just put the BC in the header. It's way easier. So
there we go. So BC in the header, email Mike. And we will also have his email in the show notes. Mike, really appreciate you coming in, joining the BC Zoom room, and excited to see what you do in the future.
Great to be in the Zoom room. Appreciate it, man.
Have a good one.
All right, you too.